truly, when I go write music now, I'm like, how do I find this moment of confidence and zen that Cole Palmer can find on the ball? He seems like he's living in a completely different world than any other player on the field.
My guest today is a source of light in a world that's too often filled with darkness. The songs on his records, including the double platinum Stick season, are filled with honesty and empathy, as well as guitar, banjo and mandolin propelled vulnerable truth. His latest release, Live from Fenway Park, is just 18 tracks of full-on catharsis. Let's just say, this gent's emotional heat map covers the full length of the field. More than that, he's also proper football. Indeed, believe it or not, Chelsea Football Club have done for him what his music has done for millions of listeners around the world. It's a true joy to welcome the LL Bean of song. It's Mr. Noah Kahan.
Thanks, Raj. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I have one amendment.
Please.
I don't think Chelsea has brought me just joy. I've tried to bring just joy to fans. Chelsea have brought me a lot of joy and a lot of pain and sorrow. I just want to make sure we're clear about my experience as a Chelsea fan, especially that 2018 to 22 range.
No, I'm an Everton fan. I'd bite your arm off for genuinely 5 minutes of joy, but we will dive into both sides of these. Can I just say, and I want to start with some full disclosure. Noah, I do love you. I love you for many reasons. The way you talk about your mum, your love of your dogs, your love of Cat Stevens, but most of all, your human tenacity. Because like so many people, I first found you way back in 2020 when you started a live stream during the pandemic. Your track Maine transported me back. I used to spend every summer in that state and we couldn't go anywhere. And when we couldn't go anywhere, you transported me there. But back then you were just a dude. But I was recently back in Liverpool, my hometown. I walked down Matthew Street where the Beatles used to play. Someone in one of the bars was doing a karaoke version of Stick Season. And I do believe Vermont's tourist board will be very happy to hear a guy shout, "I love Vermont!" in a thick Scouse accent. But what's it like for you to think about how these songs, these ideas that come straight from your heart can be heard now as Merseyside karaoke songs or sung back to you by sold-out crowds in Melbourne, Australia? How do you understand the universality of your own lyrics and ideas?
Well, thank you, Raj, so much. And I want to say first that I've been following you guys for a long time as well. And some of my favorite parts of the weekends when I was, in high school, we were listening to you guys talk. It was like the first time so much of soccer commentary was so serious and so analytical. And there was like a level of dry coldness to it that I feel like, protected us from the emotion of the game. And so hearing you guys talk about it with humor and with passion was a really fun way to kind of absorb the experience. So I want to thank you for what you guys have done for the game.
No, I'll just say the last bit of Englishness. I'm American now, but that is a healthy dose of self-loathing. So I won't have nice things said about me on this show.
Sorry. Everton suck.
That's better.
It's hard to describe the feeling you get when you've worked for something that you love and you've made music that really means something to you. And it's specific to my experience. My experience in Vermont, in this place that not a lot of people know about, and to see it connect around the world, I think is what magic really looks like, is people finding solace in your own story and finding solace in their own lives through your lyrics is the ultimate gift. And I think it kind of solved this problem for me where it's like, can I write about things that I care about and have them mean something to other people? Because with Stick Season, I was very happy just writing something that I cared about if it didn't connect with anybody else because it made me so happy. And so when it works on a global scale like it has, it really it wakes you up to how alike we all are. And it really instills some hope in humanity for me, that people can find connection through our own learned experiences and find ways to bring that into their own lives. And it just kind of reinvigorated my love for music, but also my hope for humanity in a lot of ways.
God, if that is not a message that resounds from the hilltops right now, I don't know what is. It's so bloody good to see you. We're chatting. You've just finished 2 years of near non-stop global touring on your We'll All Be Here Forever tour, spending all those weeks and months being Noah Kahan, the world-famous singer-songwriter, the musician whose name is on millions of T-shirts around the world in all capital letters. How is it to transition back into being just off stage, Noah? Is it a gradual process, or does it just take one pat of your dogs and you're back?
Yeah, great question, Raj. Well, I took the name of the tour very seriously. I was really there forever and ever and ever. I don't think we released enough versions of Sixth Season. I think we need about 15 more before I'm truly satisfied. But I had the best couple years of my life, really, in my career. Just the most fulfilling, creatively, professionally, personally. I grew a lot as a person. I also, felt like I grew as an artist and as a professional. And it was such a big part of my life. And really, like, it was more than just 2 years because the process of making Sixth Season was about 2 years. So it was really like basically a college education's worth of experience around this album and living in this world that I was trying to create. And so it's been like any transition, like kind of complicated leaving tour and being like, who am I now? And it's been a challenge in a lot of ways, but it's also been really beautiful to have that kind of emptiness and to be forced to reckon with myself again, and not have somebody handing me a tea or a bunch of people cheering for me every night. Like sometimes I'll just play crowd noise throughout my house so that it feels like I'm still on stage. But it's been great. I'm grateful for the time I had and grateful for the time I have off now.
I mean, in a way, we're all just facing up to the emptiness. But on the slightly greater theme of Everton sucks, I do own one of your tour T-shirts, Noah. It's the one that says cathartic sobbing and existentialism guaranteed, which I think is Everton's unofficial motto.
I've loved so many of your Everton teams over the years, and there's been some amazing moments. I know you guys have had some hard years, and this past couple of years have been difficult, but I believe in you guys. You're a great club. You got great fans.
Being given an Everton cuddle by Noah Kahan is not what I thought would happen in this interview, but my God, I didn't know I needed it till I got it. And I do want to get to the football, but I do have, by the way, I could ask you, I mentioned up top Cat Stevens, and he has driven my life in a way that you drive so many listeners. I could do a whole show with you where I believe we just revel in our favourite Cat Stevens tracks, Noah. Can I just get a blast? What are the top 3 Cat Stevens Noah contracts all time?
There are so many Cat Stevens songs that I could, like you said, I could rattle these off with you for a while. I think the story of how I fell in love with Cat Stevens is kind of a funny one. My dad played me Father and Son, which is my favorite song of all time. I think the greatest song of all time. Just the perspective of youth versus aging versus this stubbornness versus this kind of wisdom. And I tried to play it as the first song I learned to play with my dad on the guitar, and so I tried to play it at my school talent show. But when you weren't good enough for the school talent show, they made you go play it at the old folks' home in Hanover, New Hampshire. And I think at the time I should have realized that song in particular at an old folks' home might not have been the best, because it's kind of this like, there's a perspective of like old people don't know what they're talking about. And so I remember playing that song with my dad, and it was kind of just like, you guys don't understand, you don't listen, and these old, also I'm 8 years old, so it's just like really young versus older experience, and it was the first time I played live with my dad, so it meant a lot to me, but it was also just kind of the funny story. So I think that's my number one. Peace Train, another one of the greatest songs of all time, and my third favorite Cat Stevens songs is Lily White. I just love that tune. It's gorgeous. It's some of his best songwriting.
God, can I just say, the vision of you, aged 8, playing, knowing that you weren't good enough for the school talent show, being kicked down a division to play at the old folks home was like the greatest Rushmore scene that was never actually in the movie but should have been. But God, in addition to music, you've noted it already, one of the other constants in your life, since back when you were a dinosaur-obsessed elementary schooler, has been football, sweet football. You grew up, I believe, playing for the mighty Lightning Soccer Club and for Hanover High School. For those of us who didn't get to see Noah Kahan, Hanover's number 9. What kind of player were you?
Wow, I've never heard anybody reference my Lightning soccer days. I wasn't exactly blowing up the stat sheet. I was always, I actually think I was a better player than I gave myself credit for, but I was surrounded by really, really talented players growing up. I thought I sucked, and then I came to Nashville and played in an adult league, and I was like, oh, dude, I'm way better than these, like, tech guys. But but when I was growing up, I was surrounded by, like, incredible talent in our area. A lot of guys that went D1, a couple guys that went and played professionally. I remember watching Lucky Makasana for Dartmouth College score bicycle kicks, and, he played in the pickup group locally, and so there was real access to this like world-class talent. So I kind of always had this insecurity about my game, but I was the most insecure position, which is a striker. I was number 9. I was kind of a lazy guy. I wasn't sprinting up and down the field, but I think I had a pretty good sense of who to pass to. I had a good shot. I had a good first touch. I always say I had the first touch of Henry and the speed of I was slow as hell. I looked like Giroud now.
By the way, I read your high school newspaper, The Broadside, and it described you as, quote, one of the best headers on the team who can play anywhere up front. And I did immediately picture you as Olivier Giroud, but even more handsome.
Well, yeah, no one's more handsome than Giroud. I mean, he has one of the greatest asses in all of sports.
Truth.
But I was put in for corner kicks only for my senior year. They would they would build up the play. We get to the corner. They would sub me in on the corner. I'd sprint in there, go bash my head against whatever, the ball, the post, the person in front of me, and then they'd take me out. So I was a good header. I think it was just like, this guy's crazy. He doesn't give a shit about his future. Let's throw him in for the corners and see what happens.
Noah Kahn, special teams. By the way, I love this fact. You still go back to play an annual alumni game at Hanover, and you admitted you, quote, get more nervous for the alumni game than when you do a Jimmy Kimmel appearance. Is that really true?
Yeah, alumni game is twice a year, and I've been to the Grammys. I've played Madison Square Garden, Fenway Park. That first touch in the freezing November air is so much more nerve-wracking than the first strum of the guitar up on stage at MSG. I think it's because there are 11 people total in the audience, but for some reason it just brings me back to that feeling of being in high school and being like, oh my God, I might never play again if I don't do well right now. I'm like one of those youth guys that goes in, and if you have a bad touch, social media is like, forget about him, send him to Fenerbahce. And so I was like, I was trying to make my impression every time I played, and I still try to do the same thing at the alumni game. I'm always also trying to, I feel like every year I play, I'm getting older, and we play against the current high school kids. And so I'm kind of fighting off my mortality in a lot of ways out there, too. So the stakes are a lot higher than they appear.
Aren't we all? Every touch of the ball, we're just getting closer to death, children. Just remember that. But the
name of my next album. Closer to death.
Yeah, one bad touch, and we're all closer to death. By the way, Noah, if you've survived the old folks' home in Hanover, you could survive a season at Fenerbahce, take it from me. But the origin story of all of this football love, I want to go back to the source of the river. You were living in Vermont, you were quite young, and your family's neighbours during the summer happened to be English. And when they were back in England, I believe they lived next door or close to Chelsea legend and friend of this show, Super Frankie Lampard. Which led almost by osmosis to you becoming a Chelsea supporter. But tell us about these people. Tell us about this moment.
Yeah, so I mean, in Vermont, in New Hampshire, we were 2.5 hours away from Boston. So, we're Boston sports fans for the most part, but we never really had, a Vermont team. We never really had a team we could go travel to every day. So I was kind of in this like gray area for sports fandom. My mom was a Steelers fan, my dad was a Red Sox fan, and there's these kind of like half fandoms that we had in our home, in our area. But soccer was something that I played a lot growing up, and so when my neighbors would come back to our house in the summertime and talk about Chelsea and Frank Lampard, and they had the Samsung Mobile jerseys, and they were talking about Carvalho and Drogba and Ballack and these great players, and I kind of just, like you said, by osmosis, started to kind of fall in love with this team. I bought FIFA 2006. And I was playing FIFA with Chelsea, and then I started to watch Chelsea a lot more. And, there wasn't a lot of games being broadcast at that time. But when Chelsea was on, I would watch every one and just kind of fell in love. And it became this, like, obsession. It was my first obsession with anything was with Chelsea.
I mean, we'll break down this obsession because it is truly rich and I think incredibly nourishing. But I do want to acknowledge you joined the Chelsea world at an incredible time. It was the Carlo Ancelotti era. Premier League winners, FA Cup winners. This really happened, listeners. John Terry was still only mildly controversial back then. It was like a glorious time to start following a club, and timing's everything. You always had the football equivalent of making a first trip to McDonald's at the very time the McRib was on the menu.
It felt like that. It was serendipitous. I mean, I think that's why now, and Chelsea have gone through a few lean years, a couple of years of Jorginho being our top scorer with 7 goals.
All from penalties.
And so the perspective of, look, we've won so much. And I started watching in 2009 when we were winning everything. That team was so incredible. That's still my favorite Chelsea team ever. We had a lot of amazing, amazing years, especially my first few years of watching. And I think that's kind of what helped me fall in love with the team, was the kind of the romance around that time. These players that were legends, they felt like titans. I feel like now the players are all so much younger than me, and these guys when I was 8 or 9 were way older than me. I'm like, these guys are my heroes. And so it was an amazing time to start watching Chelsea, and I'll never forget watching them. I think they beat Aston Villa or was Wigan 8-0 on the last day of the season, and Anelka, Drogba, and one other guy, I can't remember who it was, were doing like the performance at the corner flag. Like Drogba was playing the guitar and Anelka was playing the drums. And it was just like... Malouda, that's right. Yeah, oh, Florent Malouda, what a player. Just watching those guys in that time of my life, like kind of was, like when you hear an album at the right time, like when you hear a song at the right time in your life, and for the rest of your life, when you hear that song, it reminds you of a simpler time. So Chelsea to me represented so much more than just watching the soccer. It was watching, my childhood and like watching myself feel joy and remembering that there was like heroes in my life still. Because I never idolized musicians or actors or celebrities, really. I always idolized, footballers.
And when you saw the guitar playing, Drogba, the drumming, there, you're like, I want to be in that band. That's the band I want to be in.
So that's the closest I'll feel to being a Chelsea player, is that I also play guitar. I might not be able to score, but I could get out there and I could do the celebration with them. So,
again, in a way, your real career path was honed in that moment. But you and your mum, Laurie, watched the games together. I believe she was a big fan of Chelsea's then striker, Fernando Torres. Your mum, by the way, sounds incredible. I love this so bloody much. When Chelsea played Champions League matches on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoons, she'd call your school and tell them that you'd gotten sick so she could pick you up. This is kind of like a scene out of Ferris Bueller, so she could watch the games with you. This is absolutely an elite parenting move.
Yep, I'll never forget during the 2012 Champions League run, I was able to leave school Tuesdays. I mean, that was such an incredible run too. I would have ran away from school and joined the circus if it meant I could watch Chelsea. But my mom would take me out of school on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. My favorite thing was with my mom is we would make nachos, and then she said that I could swear while Chelsea were playing, because we would speak in British accents and swear at the TV. And so she was like, you can swear when you're watching Chelsea. And so we were like screaming at the referees and yelling at the other players and like just cheering our guys on. And it was the biggest bonding I had with my mom, was watching those Chelsea teams and the 2010s together. It was the biggest part of my life.
Can you give us a blast of young Noah swearing in an English accent at the
television? Go on then! I don't know I don't want to say anything offensive. What's like an offensive thing that's not too offensive? I feel like I was saying fuck you like that.
Was the word wanker flung around?
Wanker was thrown around, yeah. Because we can't. There's some words that you guys can say that we can't say.
Yes, that's
so
fair.
I couldn't say those ones still, but I could say anything American sounding in a British accent. I'd be like, fuck you, mate.
You sound like you're auditioning for an update of Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, Dick Van Dyke of our generation. But the two of you, your mum and you did take this seriously. You wrote for a Chelsea fan site together. I think it was called Chelsea in America. And I wonder, how did being able to share those matches and work on those match recaps together shape your fandom, shape your world, shape your relationship with your mum at this crucial time in your upbringing?
Well, I idolized my mom because not only was she an amazing mother, but she was also an incredible writer. I really looked up to her, and I had been writing songs. I started writing songs kind of around when I started watching Chelsea, and when I was 7 or 8 years old. And so when I was 11 or 12 years old, 13 years old, when we started writing for Chelsea in America, I believe that was the name of the magazine. I don't want to misrepresent myself, but we were writing for a Chelsea fan magazine based in the States. And getting a chance to watch my mom write and to feel like we were doing something together was really important to me, because I looked up to her as a writer so much, and she gave me all this advice on my songwriting. And so getting a chance to feel like I was on, in any way, an even platform with my mom from a writing perspective was really invaluable and incredibly cool for me to see my mom, how she edited, how she wrote. And it inspired me in my own songwriting, in my own writing, even in my future, to some of the things she taught me about writing and the focus it takes and the dedication it takes. Even though we were writing about, whatever, Chelsea's newest youth player, it still felt like I was learning life lessons in writing and literature in itself. So it was a really special time. I got to say, I got a little tired of it. It was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh, geez, I got to write about it. We tried 0-0. I don't want to write about this shit. But it was really cool to feel like I was part of the Chelsea community with my mom in a way that felt bigger than just watching the games.
Football to me is best when it's about more than football. And a couple of years, you wrote a beautiful essay about your love of Chelsea for Atlas Obscura, and everyone who's listening should find it and read this piece because it's so honest and so heartfelt. There's a quote in it that I go back to a lot. You wrote that I was so insecure at the time. I think I needed to feel safe, and watching Chelsea Football Club was the only time I ever felt completely safe and free to express myself. Chelsea got me out of my head. I mean, it's an incredible statement, but I don't want to project. Can you explain that experience to us now?
I think it's still true for me. Even though watching football is it can bring you to extreme highs and extreme lows. It brings you out of yourself. It's bigger than you. I was so caught up, and I'm still all the time so caught up in myself, and especially now in my job, where it's like I'm almost like constantly confronted with myself, with my thoughts, my feelings, my brand, my marketing, my impact on people's lives or the people around me that work with me or work for me or that I work for. And I spend so much time in here thinking about me. And Chelsea has always, from when I was a little kid to now, has brought me away from me for a second. It's felt like I was in service of something else besides myself, and I was watching this team and rooting this team on. It helped me escape from whatever was happening my day to day. It was like turn the TV on, skip past Gary Neville talking, watch Chelsea, and and suddenly I'm out for a second. And I would literally watch every second of the pre-show and post-show because I was just wanted to live in this moment of being away from me for a while. And that was hard. It's sad to think like I was having such a hard time living in my own brain that I needed this thing to zap me out of it for a second. But it really did. And it was at the time, a really magical tool for me.
It's the same goes for being on any team, for any kid. It takes you outside of the eye and makes you think. It forces you to confront something bigger than yourself, which is one of the joys of the game. But listening to I'm about 87 years older than you, but your love for this team, this foreign team, this faraway thing, this almost magical thing, I do relate to it. It sounds like a story I've told a couple of times. I felt lost as a 14-year-old, and then I first laid eyes on the then Super Bowl winning Chicago Bears, and I'd never been to America, never mind Chicago. But watching them reinvent themselves from a team that have for like decades been just a bunch of losers into sudden swaggering winners taught me as a kid you can change in life. Anything's possible. You at a similar time, 15, 16, in rural Vermont, writing songs already, watching this football club that played thousands of miles away. In some way, did Chelsea's successes, their comebacks, their Champions League win, did they allow you to dream or imagine that something different was possible for you too?
Yeah, I think they did. I think watching in particular that 2012 run was so inspiring. Like every game, the heart, the drive, this feeling of like, also this very rare feeling of believing that it's going to work out even if it doesn't look like it's going to. I think they're so rare in life that you just have a feeling where something's going to happen and then it actually happens. Like written in the stars, I'll give Gary Neville that. That's an incredible quote. Like it truly, I always felt like music for me was going to happen no matter what. Like when I was in 6th grade, we wrote letters to ourselves for when we graduated high school. And you were supposed to read them after graduation. And in my letter, I said, you're going to be a musician. You're going to have a record deal by the time you graduate high school. And I wrote that when I was 12, and I opened it up when I was 18, and I had a record deal, and it was one of those things that I always believed for myself, and I think that Chelsea team always believed. And so it felt like I was like, oh, this is possible. Like, these guys believe in themselves. I believe in myself, too. And I knew my journey was going to take longer than, May 19th, 2012 being the end date for the Champions League final. My dream was going to be years in the future, but when I was struggling to remember my passion or my belief, I would be like, well, they did it. and I can too. And it really did have like this effect on me where like magic was back in the world. And then 2017, 2018, I was like, maybe magic isn't in the world as much anymore. But
we'll get. By the way, you said that Champions League win 2012, you said was the best day of your life.
Yes.
They ended up winning on penalties, if you don't remember it, dear listeners. You called it way cooler than being nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah, way cooler. And they actually won. So.
By the way, you mentioned Gary Neville, written in the stars. Yeah, I mean,
Hilarious.
you are the king of duets. You duet with some of the most nourishing human beings in the world. Brandy Carlisle, Gracie Abrams, our mate Hosier. How have you never done a duet with Gary Neville?
Because I've been annoyed at Gary Neville. Last year, when we lost that game against Liverpool in that cup final, I didn't feel like he needed to go so hard when he was like $1 billion. I'm like, you got just rubbing it in. We already lost. Like, why can't you just let us lose? It's already painful enough. Like, it felt like this moment where he was like getting his own shots in, and that really bothered me. And by the way, I heard you like scream like you were having an orgasm when Torres scored in 2012. So don't make me pull up the audio tape, Gary.
God.
Don't make me pull up the audio tape. We all heard that. It just, I don't know. I'm very sensitive to that kind of thing.
That sent a chill down my own spine when he said, I heard you scream as if you'd had an orgasm. I was like, I thought there'd been some Noah hacking going on. But I do want to say, this is what is incredible about you. Despite your success, or maybe because of it, no matter where you are in the world, whatever you're doing, you have found a way to watch every Chelsea game. You haven't missed seeing one of them in, I believe, 13 years. It's your bar mitzvah of watching Chelsea. Some of Chelsea's own managers don't pay as much attention as you do, Noah. When you're on the road, sleeping in a bunk on the tour bus, double checking what time zone you're in, what does watching Chelsea mean for you now? Is it like an escape? Is it a bit of normality? Is it a reminder of home and that connection with your mum?
Yeah, those are all great ways to describe it. I think as life gets stressful for me or more complicated and kind of change, there's so much change in my life. You know, my career has changed a lot. My career trajectory has changed a lot. My circle, my business, all these different things have just kind of evolved in a way that can sometimes be really jarring. It feels like you wake up and you're like, whoa, like how did I enter into this life? And Chelsea is something that's been there forever. And so it's just like constant. And it's just like a reminder of like, oh, this is who you are. And that's never going to change. Like I'll always have Chelsea, for better or for worse, every weekend, except for when they do these international breaks, which they need to cool out on. Those are too many of them. We get it. But it's always there for me. And so it kind of like allows me to find my center again, like you said. And it also allows me to reconnect with people, from my childhood that I used to watch with, but also just every weekend, my mom, my little brother, and I will jump in a group chat and talk about Chelsea. And like you said, it's just a constant. And it's really important, I think, to have consistency in your life. If it's not... if it's not Chelsea, if it's even just a meal you like to eat or a show you like to watch, just having something that centers you, and Chelsea is my center.
Consistency, ritual, grounding. But I need to ask you, you've hinted at it a couple of times, Noah. You know, when you began to watch this magical Chelsea, this hero Chelsea, they won. They won a lot. The modern Chelsea history, the identity was almost fused with winning by right. And the club have had challenges, chaos, organisational, systemic challenges over the last couple of years. Chelsea fans used to winning. What do you do when you don't? I guess I'm asking for Noah wisdom for all of our listeners, but especially for me as an Everton fan.
The least you can ask of a group of players is that they try. I think there have been some times in the past 5 years where it feels like there's a lack of, understanding of a system that can kind of bring about this confusion that can present itself as, being unmotivated or not having the passion. And that's what hurts me. I feel like I've seen us lose a lot, more than I would like to. But, like you said, we won so much. But I hate watching when it feels like guys are giving up. That makes my heart hurt. But I think the way you deal with the losing is you remember that, A, it's just a game. For us, it's just a game. We're not playing out there. None of us are going pro. I mean, it's your job, I guess. But for me, it's just a game. You actually can have a different perspective on that.
I'm dead inside, Noah.
For every bad thing, there's going to be a good thing down the road. There's been so many great moments, remembering those moments, but not living in the past. And just kind of taking away one positive from each game, and being like, at least we had this happen, or at least we had this happen. I remember there's so many games that I'm like, last year and the year before, like watching Cole Palmer and watching some of these younger players find their feet and finding those positives even when we were losing was what I tried to do. But it just never feels good to lose, and you want to win all the time. But as a Chelsea fan, I've been spoiled. I can only imagine as an Everton fan, I'm genuinely curious when was the last trophy, you guys? Well, it must have been 90s?
1995, Noah. It was yesterday.
95.
It was yesterday.
Yeah, just yesterday. Yeah.
It was yesterday. When Everton lose, which they do a lot, as you know, I always listen to Tracy Chapman Fastcar when they lose, just to remind myself that however sad I feel, Tracy is sadder. And in recent years, I've listened, can I tell you this? I've listened to The Howling.
Oh, dude.
That
You're listening to Howling?
I listen to that line. It gives me such like recentering. The world is small, and I'm sick of all the talk of finding purpose. I can't tell you how healing that is.
I don't listen to that song. I need someone to do a welfare check on Raj. If someone hears Howling coming out of his office, get in there and give him a kiss on the forehead. Somebody help this guy out. That's a sad song. I don't even play that song live. Like sometimes I'm like, dude, what the hell was I going through? That was so sad. But that's a good song to listen to put into perspective how much worse it could be, for sure.
Yes, and you made it through, and we will make it through. I draw strength from your tenacity. And so many millions do. You just toured throughout the United Kingdom earlier this year. You left enough time between your shows, I think Belfast and Birmingham in August, to get to London, to Stamford Bridge, to watch Chelsea's first match of the season against Manchester City, the Cole Palmer Memorial Derby. Noah, what did you see? What was it like for you to be there in person? What was it like to go through the looking glass, a place you'd seen from afar so many times? What was it like when the imagination met the reality?
I think the coolest thing, and I had been there once before, but I was in a totally different area. I got to go on the field, and I got to see these players up close, and just be, I've seen every single inch of the stadium on their website, on YouTube, on like YouTube flyovers, and obviously on TV as they broadcast the games. But being there is so hard to describe. It feels like simultaneously smaller and bigger in person. It's just, first of all, there's not a blade of grass out of place. So as someone who grew up playing, it's like, oh my gosh, how beautiful are the fields. And seeing the stands and seeing, Terry, captain, leader, legend, and these Super Frank and the Zola tribute, and just seeing these things in person, it felt like, oh my gosh, this is like where I've always belonged. I've went to a lot of sports stadiums and seen a lot of games, but I never felt like it was for me in a lot of ways. And being there was incredible. I got to watch these players. Holland's huge. Watching the game, it was like, we lost, and it was, I don't think we expected an incredible result that day, first day of the season. So much change happening. But after we lost, I just sat in the seat for like 25 minutes and just looked around and just saw the stands and absorbed it, because for an American fan, it's rare that you get to do that. And I think hopefully no one out in England takes it for granted, because it's truly something that if I could, I would go to every single game. It was such an unbelievable experience.
We are speaking at a time of green shoots of optimism for your club. They're currently fifth in the table. They seem to be an ever sharpened threat once again. What have you made of the season so far? First under your new brain in a bottle tactical chess player / manager, the quite fascinating Enzo Maresca.
I think it's really difficult as a Chelsea fan to fall in love with a manager, as you can imagine, because we see him come and go. And, Pochettino last year, I thought that we were really improving towards the end of the season, or at least we kind of escaped from a very dire, table position. And I was surprised to see him go. And it was one of those moments as a Chelsea fan that I felt like when I woke up and saw Tuchel was fired, or when I saw that, we were letting go of Mourinho, and just like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And so it's so hard for me to kind of find the passion, or at least the belief that a manager will stay with us long term. But this is the first time in a while that I've allowed hope back into my life. It's a very dangerous thing to do. As an Everton fan, you probably don't know about it right now. But
hope and shattered hope are the same thing for me now, to be candid. But it is a brave move.
Two sides of the same coin. We haven't just looked exciting. We haven't just won some games, but we've looked competent and aware of something larger for the first time in a long. I think we've relied on individual brilliance a lot in the last few years. We've relied on a couple key players making the difference, a couple key decisions, helping us out. And I think watching the system form, where it's like, yes, Cole Palmer is for sure the centerpiece of this team. He's an unbelievable, I think, in my opinion, the best player in the Premier League right now. Of course, we have Cole Palmer and we have Nico Jackson and this wonderful attack, but we have this kind of unity within the squad that you can see on the field. In defense, we have an idea of what we're supposed to be doing. In attack, we have an idea of what we're supposed to be doing. Sanchez is back there. I love Sanchez. Some of his distribution concerns me, but it still feels like even with Sanchez that there's this sense of impatience to get started, and like this feeling of we have something that we're about to show the fans and this other team. And I love watching that, because it feels, for the first time, like I don't have to be waiting for the other shoe to fall and for us to fall apart completely. I think we were very mentally, I don't say mentally weak, because that sounds, kind of like antithetical to what I do in my own job. But I think we have some real fragility in that when we would go behind, it was over. Or if we would get scored on or a decision would go against us, we would not be able to overcome that mentally. And this year, there's a real resilience here, and there's a real maturity that's growing in the squad despite the youth. And there's also just an unbelievable depth. I mean, if you look at our game in the Conference League and look at our game in the Premier League 2 days later, like it's almost two completely different teams full of really, really talented players. And we look, I think, as good a team in the Conference League as we do in the Premier League. Like we're able to kind of transition from these two squads and make the football look seamless.
That was amazing, by the way. Chelsea in America need that kind of caliber of writing back. You mentioned Cole Palmer, and it has been transcendent watching him thrive at Chelsea. He's just 22, 32 goals in 56 appearances for the club. Noah, when you watch him play, is it like watching someone like, I think of what other people think when they watch self-taught musicians like Keith Richards or Jimi Hendrix, who just ooze natural, effervescent, electric creativity?
Jimi Hendrix is a great comparison, I think, because there's just this feeling of just this comes so easily to them. The guitar felt like it was an extension of his body, and Cole Palmer is, he's got the nonchalant kind of like non-media trained, very chill, cool, and he exudes cool when he's out there. Reminds me a little bit of Mesut Ozil in some ways, just the ability to kind of just relax on the field and play his own game no matter the circumstance. He seems like he's living in a completely different world than any other player on the field, and I don't know. I actually don't like the narrative that he's dumb or whatever. I think he's an incredibly intelligent player, but I think he's able to kind of find zen in a way that's really inspiring. For me, I actually, truly, when I go write music now, I'm like, how do I find this moment of confidence and zen that Cole Palmer can find on the ball? Because it seems like he's aware, he's in the right place at the right time, he's doing the right things, but he's not doing it in a frantic way. It's so relaxed. Like, I love watching him play because it relaxes me.
That's so true. My God, it is amazing because we had him on and I asked him what he thinks of when he's taking a penalty. And he thought the whole question was ridiculous. I think his answer was, I don't know. I don't think. And you've given the third sentence that he didn't say. It was just a state of zen, that same level of creativity that you seek in your songwriting.
Absolutely. I had a friend growing up when I played Lightning Soccer. He was way better. He was playing Seacoast in Epping, New Hampshire. And
what was his name?
His name was Jonas Tanzer. And he was on the way to, that's an unbelievable soccer player, the best I'd ever seen playing with me. And, he was the same way. Like I was a hustle guy. I was hustling my ass off, making up for how unathletic I was, and having to kind of like always be sprinting and running and yelling. And Jonas was just in center midfield, just controlling everything, so relaxed, so composed. And I think that's what gets you to a great place in life, where you feel confident, you feel relaxed, and you're able to do your job without being frantic about it. And I love that about Cole Palmer.
God, may we all be like Cole and Jonas. By the way, which of the current Chelsea squad do you most relate to? Do you most empathise with?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I wish I had Cucurella's hair.
You and me both, baby.
Yeah. I really love watching Levi Colwill play. I like watching him develop. I think he's becoming a really special player. I think, he's got this fire when he makes a big stop or a big tackle or he plays someone off sides at the right time. Like you can see how passionate he's about it. I love watching passion in this club. Like it's so nowadays with soccer, like in football and whatever, and it feels like players come to a club for money or they come for a few years and they leave, and it doesn't feel like they're part of the ecosystem here. And Levi Colwill feels very much a part of the fabric of this team.
Can I say, I do need to bring this up. When I first heard you were proper Chelsea, I think we posted it on Instagram, and people were like, "That does not seem quite like Noah's brand." Chelsea are filled with swagger, with flash bright lights of London. They're a billionaire-owned club. To me, before I got to have this conversation with you, you did seem more kind of scrappy, historic team. Like I can imagine you being like Ipswich and Sheeran.
I think I always wondered what would happen if I found a different team, or like if it could have happened in a different way. Just being in America, being in Vermont, you're so removed from British football culture, and this is just the introduction I got. But I will say, I think Chelsea have an underlying anxious energy in general, especially over the past 10 years. There's like a level of underlying anxiety that exists here. And I think even right now, a lot of fans are feeling it because we're playing well and we're just waiting and waiting for the bad thing to happen. And that's kind of how I feel in my life all the time, just waiting for the bad to come. And so, and in that way, I do relate to Chelsea a lot. We've won a lot, but there's been so much, tumult and anxiety that's stretched around this team for years and years before Bowley and Igbali. But I think that's why I relate to them. There's this kind of unease that just exists as a Chelsea fan.
I love that, the existential angst at the core of the project. I mean, we've heard the personal memories that you have forged. That explains everything to me. A little part of it was I thought maybe Chelsea are the real Noah that we do not see, like your id, an expression of that.
Yeah, it's like the ego, right? Yeah. No, unfortunately, what you see is what you get.
Thank God. Thank God. It has been a surreal time to be a Chelsea fan, as you say. For the last few years, they've been almost their own version of stick season. But you've been watching this team for a decade and a half. You've lived, you've died with every result. So much success. Now we're in this era where there's like 27 midfielders arriving every summer, along with 8 goalkeepers. Yeah. When you do look at this year's version of the squad, the progress that they have made, what, if anything, are they missing other than a number 9 from Vermont who can trot on, but only for corners? And project forward. Tell us what you see in store, Noah Kahan.
I think there's a few pieces. I think, as much as I love Colwell and Fofana, I think there's been a lot of injuries. I think a really strong center back option would be important for us. I occasionally find that we look shaky on the counterattack. You saw it at Newcastle this week. I was, that was an amazing move from that team. It was unbelievable. They carved right through us. I think some more organization in defense, and that could come from a goalkeeper who maybe has a little bit more confidence in his distribution. But also, if we're going to play out of the back, the center back and the goalkeeper pairing has to be really dialed in. So I don't want to advocate for getting rid of anybody, but I think if we could improve our squad, getting a squad center back who can come in and bring some composure, especially in cup games or conference league games, would go a long way for us. And I also think that the depth we have has created like a really healthy competition within the squad that's allowed players to shine when they get their moments. Look at Misha. In the conference league, had 2 assists and a goal. Like, a lot of players could sit in the bench and not play in the Premier League and let that affect their confidence during the week. And so I think the healthy competition is good. So another center back could bring us to a place where we have some motivation for the players to earn their spot week in, week out.
Project it forward. How optimistic should we be, Noah? Speak to Chelsea Nation for this year, but the progress, the direction.
Chelsea Nation, we've won so much. We've had some years where we haven't been fun to watch day to day. Let's enjoy every weekend getting to watch this team play together. I think that we will get top 4 this year. I think that should be a bare minimum expectation for us with this squad. But also, let's just try to enjoy this. It's such an amazing time with the way we're playing, the optimism around the club. Let's try to watch every weekend and enjoy it and remember how lucky we are to have this squad of players instead of the squad from a few years ago. Like, we had Sal and Drinkwater in there. It could be so much worse. Things are good. I'm trying to just sit here in the moment, live in the moment, and enjoy how good this squad is. I'm hoping we finish top 4, but for now, I'm loving watching us play.
Watch this team like Cole Palmer takes penalties just in a constant state of zen. One more football thing, different, but I admire it equally as your fandom. This September, you partnered with the quite incredible Vermont Green Football Club. We actually did a live show with them last year in Burlington. What a club. What a
Amazing.
Town. Together you offered a limited edition Noah Kahan Vermont Green kit, and all of the proceeds went to your mental health charity, the Busy Head Project, which I admire so bloody much. It's an organisation, Google it if you don't know what it is. It's raised over $2.5 million to expand access to mental health care and fight stigmas around mental health. I mean, it's just a critical mission in our nation at our time. But Noah, talk to us about this partnership and the Busy Head Project. What led you to create it, to champion it, and what are its goals?
So growing up in Vermont, New Hampshire, grew up in a really nice area, upper middle class, around Dartmouth College. I was just fortunate growing up, I think, in terms of safety, security, financially, just the life I was given by my parents. So grateful for it. But I also was struggling with my mental health from a very, very young age. Anxiety and depression, depersonalization, and some mild dissociation when I was a kid. And it was hard, to feel like I was in this great family, in this great town, but still struggling. I was like, why do I feel like this? Why do I feel pain, even though I have, a loving family and great school and friends? And so I was kind of feeling these things, and my parents were always talking to me about how I was feeling about them. They would, how are you doing? What's going on with you? I would cry to my mom and my dad, and they would tell me how to get through it. And it was then it was conversations of, hey, let's get you on some medication. Let's go get you to a therapist. These resources that my parents were able to give me were so cool. And to me, it was just life. That's how everyone's life was. You got what you needed when you were struggling. It wasn't until I left home for the first time that I started to see how rare my experience was and how incredibly unfair for folks who don't have the means to afford these resources, and how people can just struggle for their entire lives without getting the help they need. And when I started to get into my music career and I was writing about mental health, and you've been listening for a long time, so mental health and depression and anxiety have been a big part of my songwriting. But as I had this moment with Stick Season where I was playing 1,200 capacity clubs and theaters to 22,000 capacity arenas and amphitheaters, real money, real change, real platform started to exist for me, and I felt this extreme drive to put my money where my mouth was. I was singing about stuff and that was about mental health and anxiety, and people were telling me it saved them, and I don't know, I just felt this guilt I wasn't doing enough, or that I was just accessorizing it somehow, or just making it about me, and it made me feel empty. And so I thought back to when I was a kid, and I had all the opportunities to get help. How can we make those opportunities for people who don't come from an upper middle class town in Vermont, New Hampshire? How do we bring that to people who don't have parents who are open about it, or don't have anyone to talk to about it? And so we started looking at organizations that were doing amazing work in their communities in North America, and finding ways to help them get the money they need to do their work more efficiently and in a broader way. We weren't trying to create our own resource or be therapists for people. We were trying to highlight the people that were putting in years and lifetimes worth of work into the mental health space. And we raised $2 million over the past couple of years, and it feels like just one of the really good things that I've gotten to do. And I think there's so much that's about me, and it's about what I get, and I get to sell these shows out, and I get to be applauded for being a musician. And this feels like it's not about me, but it feels like I can help make it happen. And so it's really fulfilling for me. And getting a chance to partner with Vermont Green, who I absolutely love, who I think represent Vermont in such a beautiful way. Like I said, we never got to go watch games growing up. You didn't want to go, well, you really didn't want to go see the Revolution play, but you didn't want to drive all the way to Foxborough to go watch the Revolution play. And it just was too far away. And it didn't feel like it represented where I'm from, which is Vermont. And so getting a chance to see Vermont Green play, getting a chance to be involved in what they're doing has been really, really cool. And for them to support Busy Head Project and what I'm trying to do has really kind of just increased my love for them and made watching their team and being a fan of them feel so much better. And I'm grateful for them for what they're doing for Vermont, but what they're doing for Busy Head as well.
I mean, it's the football at its best when it transcends football, and that's what Vermont Green stand for. And to see them partner with you and Busy Head was just a fusion of the kind of good that we do not have enough of in this world right now. But Noah, last question. Your song Homesick, you sang the following: I've got dreams, but I can't make myself believe them. And you're a man who's gone from buying tickets to your own shows to help them sell out, to playing sold-out concerts in stadia around the world, as you've just hinted at. Your success has been remarkable. Honestly, it's been profoundly moving to witness, even vicariously. You've achieved peak New England after playing Fenway Park, collaborating with Maine's LL Bean, and earning probably the equivalent of a Vermont knighthood, your own Ben and Jerry's ice cream flavour. So I'm going to ask you, Noah, what are you dreaming about now? And what do you want our listeners to know about what, if anything, they can take or should take from your journey to develop a confidence to believe in their own dreams, their own future?
I'm dreaming about that day where I wake up and everything feels like enough. And you can wake up and think, I don't want anything more. Or I feel comfortable and confident. I think those are things we're all striving for, just security within ourselves and an understanding of who we are. And I'm still finding that every day, trying to find out what I'm about, what moves me, what heals me, what hurts me, how to differentiate between the two and not engage in the other. I'm still dreaming about a day where I understand myself completely. And I think that's what's so fun about being a human, is that you'll never truly get there, but you can always try. So I'm still dreaming and I'm still pushing forward for that understanding. And I hope that people always strive for that. Love who you are, but look to find out exactly who you are for your whole life. It's part of the journey. And I'm still on that journey. So my next dream is to kind of make music that feels like that answers that question. That's what Stick Season did for me a few years ago, and now there's all these new questions. So asking myself the questions and trying to answer them with music is my next goal.
Noah, you are a truly beautiful human being. Thank you, and come back and be with us anytime.
Raj, thank you so much. This is so cool. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate all the work you guys have done for soccer, football in the past few years, and gonna keep watching. And always got a friend in me. Stop listening to howling, though. I need you to stop doing that. I'm not kidding.
Oh, courage.
See you later.